All right, let's see where I left off. So I still need to make a ship. I need some sort of artwork for that. I need ship part interaction. I need to be able to collect the 3 ship parts. I need to come up with a map, overall level design. Eventually, I would like to have this all be procedurally generated. I'd like to have building interiors, cutscenes. But I've only got a couple of days left in the jam, so I'm trying to stick to this jam version. Let me get my chat moved over here. Okay, all good. Okay, what do I want to work on right now? I think I need to figure out what my general level design's like. I want to have 3 different locations that the player has to go to. And I was trying to think of what they would be. I guess I need to think of what the 3 parts are. So what are the 3 things the player is trying to collect to return? Hey Ukta, thanks for checking out the stream. Thanks again for trying the game too. I think the feedback that you and a couple other people gave me is great for the new control scheme. Okay, ship parts. The 3 things that the player needs to collect. What would they be? Figured some sort of life support system. And that would probably come from a crashed rover or an old ship. Maybe a thruster. Same thing. Maybe there's an old landing site and there's something you can salvage from another rocket. Then what would the 3rd thing be? Trying to think of something that's reasonably small. I'm picturing the player or the bots carrying these different things. Oops. So let's see. If the player had to have bots carry objects, thinking something like a thruster, depending on the orientation of a crashed ship, horizontal or vertical, there could be something that, food or plants, yeah, some sort of supplies. It's a good idea. I think about maybe 16 by 16 is the biggest I want to make any piece of art here, even smaller if I can help it. So I'm thinking some sort of thruster. Would have sort of a semicircle shape. Don't really have a lot of colors to work with here. I don't know if I'd make that solid. It's not looking like a whole lot of anything right now. So what would a rocket look like? if it was fully intact. In the perspective that I've been working with, you probably wouldn't see the bottom of the thruster. You would just end up seeing kind of a cone that comes up. And you'd have the body of some sort of ship. I'm also debating if it would be a larger ship that you're taking this from. Maybe it has multiple thrusters. Yeah, I really love A-Sprite, and I've got a workflow set up where I can work directly with my sprite sheets from PICO-8. I haven't actually exported it in a while. So make sure it represents the current one. So I can open up the sprite sheet, and because I'm using special colors in PICO-8, I have to make sure I'm on an indexed color palette. And that way, any colors that I draw in here will reflect the palette that I'm using inside of PICO-8, as long as the indexes match. Let's see, so actually there I slipped up because I switched the color mode before setting the palette. So I think if I load the palette and then I switch the color mode, yeah, there we're good. So now I can draw in any colors that I'm actually using in PICO-8 and they'll map accordingly. If I were to load the default PICO-8 palette, then some of those colors would be messed up. So back to a rocket. Sort of I think it'd have more of a conical shape here at the end. Just trying to come up with a rough idea here. I don't know if this will, whatever I'm drawing will actually even be in the game. I just want a representation of what the ship is that I'm taking apart from. So anyway, I think some sort of thruster here, whatever that ends up looking like, will be one of the parts. I was hoping each of the parts would be visual. That way it made sense for them to be carried by the bots, but maybe that's not a hard restriction. Because something like a life support module could just look like a piece of machinery or equipment. So maybe a life support module is just like some sort of rectangular thing that gets carried by the bots. The smaller I can make these things, the better for my sprite space. Yeah, exactly. If I could have the parts be carried to the ship and the bots carry them to the place they belong, that way when you're at the start of the game, when you have a ship that's incomplete, you could see visually what's missing. And I guess even something like this, I'm focusing on realistic, pseudo-realistic spaceships, but even if the ship was something like that quick sketch that I did, I could have components that just get slotted in to the middle of the ship. It doesn't necessarily have to be realistic in any way. So in that case, I could see some sort of module in the middle of the ship, some sort of module at the bottom of the ship, and something near the top of the ship. Or maybe the three things. Maybe there's like a crew capsule. That was my initial thought, but that seems like it'd be too large. Let's put that background on a different layer. Yeah, so maybe there's some sort of capsule like this. I haven't watched any Doctor Who, actually. I thought about trying to get into that newest series. So I could have three components like this that make up the ship. Then each component is an 8x8 sprite. That saves me a lot of sprite space. If I end up using the whole map, then I don't get access to these two bottom tabs of the sprite, of my sprite space, because they're shared with the map. If the map ends up being smaller, then I have more space for artwork. Is Doctor Who like generally a kind of comedic sci-fi show? I think I tried to watch the original Doctor Who, and I started with the very first episode, and it had like mannequins that were coming to life or something along those lines. And I wasn't really that into it, but maybe I just started at the wrong place. So now I'm trying to see if I can take these parts and piece something together. and how big it would have to be. Just realized I never started any music on this stream. This PICO-8 lo-fi. Might be a little loud. Let me know if that sounds a little too loud. I can dial it down. Oh, maybe not. It's going to turn off when I change focus. Try something else. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to use that one. I can't adjust the volume on that right now. And it's turning off when I switch tabs. This might be a little better. Although this track is very quiet. Okay. So the ship. I have to be mindful of how much sprite space I'm taking up with the ship too. Hey Jacob, thanks. Appreciate it. Just trying to feel out what I can do with this ship right now. I'd like to start doing some more morning streams. One of my kids spent the night with my parents last night, so I've got a little more time this morning than usual. I'm trying to think about how I visualize the missing parts. If that's all there is to the ship, it's not going to look like much of anything when there's no parts collected. And I'm trying to decide if it's going to be vertical or horizontal. Battery chargers for the drones. Are you suggesting that's one of the things that would be missing from the ship at the start? Some sort of battery does make sense. Yeah, I get that. Seeing the drones in the game is like Stallone never having to reload his guns. That's an interesting idea, like a battery. So I eventually want to go back and make a larger version of this game. I don't know if... what I'll probably do, honestly, is finish up a full version in PICO-8 that is a little more detailed and has a lot of the functionality that I want. And then I'm thinking about starting it over again in Godot and trying to make it more of like a roguelike Pikmin game where you have different attributes and upgrades for the bots, and maybe battery is something that actually affects the bots in that eventual future version of the game. Yeah, PICO-8's constraints are great for focusing in on exactly what you can and can't do. I played around in Unity a lot when I was first trying to get into game development, and because of the limitless possibilities of what I could make, I never really made much of anything. Not sure if this needs more. Eight by 8 sprites can be brutal, but just like everything else in Pico-8, sometimes the limitations are freeing. I feel like this wouldn't just be laying on the ground now that I'm looking at it. I have these little leg sprites that I thought I already had them isolated. Yeah. So I have these little bits of the sprite that I could always pull out and reuse as like a leg of the spaceship. Need to make this artboard a little bit bigger. I still haven't gone back and worked on my UI either, which isn't super important right now. Eventually I wanted to have 3 different types of bots. So you'd have a basic bot that could carry and hit things, a bot that could, what am I trying to say, conduct electricity. So I thought it'd be cool to have electrical puzzles in the game where you have to throw the bots in specific places. So then if you had a bunch of bots and you needed to connect to places, you might have to throw bots in a series and have them sort of arc electricity between them to power something. And then the third one was going to be some sort of explosive bot. And I had that idea back when I had some sort of currency, like electrical components or filament or something that restricted how many bots you could have. And the idea would be if you had to use an explosive bot, you could throw it at some sort of obstacle that you wanted to destroy, and it would explode and leave parts behind that you could collect and go back to one of these stations and spawn more bots. But instead, what I have right now is this. I need to change this so it's loading the game scene directly. Right now I have these little boxes that the bots carry over, and they drop them on a platform, and then once the supply is what I'm calling it right now is collected, it spawns 2 bots. But I want to change that. I want this to be something, I want it to make sense what's happening there. I might actually inverse where you drop the supply. So maybe you throw this on the bot and the bot drops it into this machine, and this platform is more like 3D printing a bot, and it sort of materializes above the platform. Back to what I was doing with the artboard. It's giving that a little bit more space so I could pull in this ship. See, how does that work in the scale of things? I'm actually pretty happy with this ship right now. The specific modules I think still need a little bit of work, but as far as the scale and how it can be placed in the game, I think that's okay. It's at least good enough for version 1. And so then again, with no parts, I guess I want the legs on there. What is going on here? Parts. It's the right layer, right? Yeah. And make those shadows conditional on the parts existing. I think something like that's pretty good. Just realized the changes I did to this door, hatch, or whatever it's supposed to represent were on the wrong layer. I think even for this middle part, I would probably have it more closely represent the actual part here. And I could paint out more of this. I still have one too many pixels there. Something like that. I'll have to play with it. I think that does the job though. So we did thruster, some sort of life support or something, and then the crew module, or what do you call that? Command capsule or something. I don't really know spaceships. Thruster, life support. It's basically like a cockpit, but I don't want to call it that. And then it's a matter of where those exist. I was using this drawing tool. It's an extension inside of Obsidian. I cannot figure out how to change the color. Somehow I changed the color to orange. Oh, there it is. There must be a hotkey for it or something. Okay, so we have some sort of cockpit, a thruster, life support. Life support, I was pretty confident I could have a crashed rover. I'm already drawing, or I've created some sort of rover. I could try and have like something laying near it, or I could scale this up a little bit. But I could have a rover crash site or something, or a factory where rovers are being worked on, and you would get that module from that place. The cockpit, I'm not sure yet. The thruster could be any old rocket, like a past mission. I feel like the cockpit's the same sort of thing though. So I need to find two different places that you would go for these things without having to say, go to this old landing site and then go to this other old landing site. Let's work on some of the code for this. So we're gonna have these parts. I think this is gonna carry a lot of logic over from this supply class. Supply is what I'm calling these little boxes where you can throw bots at them and they carry them to a destination. So I might end up extracting a superclass out of that. And then they each extend carryable or something along those lines. So a part will have a sprite. And by default, do I have a good placeholder? I'm not using any of these right now. Let's just say part 6 or sprite 6. Something else I need to make a little more clever is this logic. So I iterate over every tile in the map, and depending on what the tile is on the map, I have a class that I can instantiate. So in this case, close a lot of this. In this case, I'm saying if you come across tile 6 when parsing the initial map, then spawn an instance of the part class, which is this. So then theoretically, I could go in here and put a part there. That would do that. I actually expected that to have an error. So I'm telling it to extend part, but I haven't added part to my classes. Unless I'm, yeah, because I'm saying tile new. Nothing else is called part. Tile 6 should spawn part. Oh. No, if tiles, tile. Yeah, so that's tile 6. This actually doesn't need to be defined in here. So this would, let's see. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now. What I'm thinking is I want to move this out to another file, to some sort of map helpers. I have an auto tile class right now, or function, that's handling all of my auto tiling, so that I can just define basic tiles like this, and then it'll draw them out how it needs to. And that one looks like it's got some bugs. I don't have this tile set with the like recessed holes, doesn't have rules for a specific, like a one square little jut out of somewhere. This one right there though, with that side sticking out, I think my rules should have covered that. So I'll have to see what's up with that. But anyway, I've got auto tile logic set up in one file. I think I want to move all of the tiling and map related stuff into a separate map class, or map file anyway. So this should look at every tile on the map, and then if it finds tile 6, it should be trying to initialize a part. Did I do something silly? No, it's tile 6. Oh, interesting. My log file's gone. Okay, why aren't we logging? Tile. Oh, this should not be a local now. Oh, somehow I broke this whole thing. What happened? It's working again with that. And then I added tiles 6 equals part. That still works. Maybe I'm crazy and I do already have a part included in here. No, I have particle. Confused why I'm not getting an error. Okay. Well, now that I included the file, it's spawning an instance of something, but this doesn't have a draw function. And my entity class, by default, I think draw does nothing. Yeah, I think that extends from GameObject. GameObject does nothing with its draw by default. So, what would my entity's default draw be? Maybe that would be helpful. If I don't define a draw, then draw a rectangle from x, y to x plus width minus 1, y plus height minus 1. It is red. Oops, I said minus 1, I did minus 7. Okay, so that's where our entity is spawning. And because it has no draw right now, we're just getting a red square in this case. If I were to say that the part was solid, then we shouldn't be able to walk through it. No? I think this might be a default hitbox thing. So my hitbox definition is the offset from the origin point. So in this case, I'm going to say it's -4 left, 3 right, -7 up, and 1, or I think 0 is what I want to go with. Oh, okay. So the square is not actually accurately representing where the box is. This is a little bit of nuance, but so in my game, I'm treating the origin of most of my sprites as the bottom center of the sprite. And then in this case, what I'm doing is if I'm trying to make that the bottom center, and my hitbox is based off of the origin being the bottom center, the hitbox has now been drawn. Actually, let me go to debug. No, where did I put it? Globals. So when debug is true, I draw hitboxes for all the entities. So in this case, there's a hitbox right here for this sprite. but I'm drawing the sprite down and to the right instead of above its origin. So my default draw here is not correct. My default draw should... X minus width divided by 2, yeah, okay. And Y should be Y minus height plus 1. I think that's pretty good. And then my hitbox on parts is just wrong. Yeah, so now those match. And so now you can see the player has a little green dot at the bottom. They just have a 1 pixel hitbox for collision. These the supplies are not considered solid, so the player can run through those. And then this rover is a special case. I may change what I'm doing with that. For the sake of pathfinding, solid objects will make the map tiles below them considered collision tiles. In this case, so the rover's hitbox goes to where the green box is, but the player can't walk right here because I've marked all of the tiles directly under the rover sprite as solid. That way, see if I can demonstrate this. If I move this over a little bit. So this supply has to figure out how to go to the platform down below. If I throw the robot on, or the bot on that, it knows to move around the rover. I guess to some extent. I think what happened there is my follow logic lets things move directly in a straight line once they have line of sight. So in this case, as soon as that bot's hitbox has a direct line to the target that it's trying to move to, it starts moving in that direction and disregards map collision. It's another bug. I don't know if I'll actually end up making these solid or giving them a large hitbox, but we'll see. And then I want my default draw should check if the entity has a sprite, then draw the sprite at, I still want these. For the sprite call to work properly, I need to know how wide the sprites are. So if it was an 8x8 sprite, I wouldn't have to define this. But if it's larger, then I need to know how many tiles, how many tiles of sprite space the sprite's actually taking up. So this form of division in PICO-8 will We'll just use integer division and throw away any remainder. So this would cause an issue. Actually, I don't think I need that. I think if I had like a 12 pixel wide sprite, it would work with the decimals. And then I need to know whether or not I'm flipping it. And I think I defined flip up here. Yeah. So if it has a sprite, by default an entity should draw the associated sprite. It's pretty good. Actually, no, I think that's fine. That's exactly what we wanted to do. That sprite has 1 pixel of empty space at the top and on the right, so it's lining up properly. In this case, because of the size the sprite is, that's when I would actually adjust these hitbox values. And now it matches it. So let's see. I'm also going to need a ship. Still doing okay on tokens. So I'm gonna have to be able to throw a bot on a part. I think the ship parts are gonna require 6 or so bots. I have a button for testing. I can just have a bunch of bots spit out here. 6 is my maximum for carrying any of these supplies. I'm also gonna have to come up with some other obstacles. Right now I just have that one sprite, that sort of rock that indicates an obstacle. But I'd like to have other things. So that's gonna take up some sprite space as well. I have a little bit to play with. Thinking other natural terrain that can be destructed, maybe a crashed rover or something like that. I'll modify these pixels a little bit and have something that looks like it's obviously destroyed, that you have to throw enough bots at to destroy it so you can move past it. I have a lot of ideas to work on and only a couple of days before the deadline of the game jam that I was hoping to submit this to. So I have some direction on the ship, on the parts. I need to think about the level layout again. Probably don't have a whole lot of time right now, on the stream anyway. So what else could I do that would be useful here? I'm eventually going to try and think of a different design for these supply sprites. I was hoping to figure out on this stream the rough level layout. So how small can I go? I can zoom in quite a bit here. So this is The rectangle represents, excuse me, the rectangle represents roughly my available space in PICO-8 for map space. So within that rectangle, I need to think, what's the general layout? Does the base start in the middle? I don't think I really want it exactly in the middle. Again, I kind of want to go for procedural generation, procedurally generated layout at some point. So base is somewhere like that. First component you could get, maybe you go to an old landing site. Crashed rover, maybe crashed rover is the nearest thing. You wouldn't have a rover go too far. So maybe the game starts and kind of holds your hand to get to the first location. And then furthest out is maybe a different landing site, and somewhere is an old moon base. This would be factory. This would be original base or old base. So then I could work with the sprites that I have. I have a class right now that's generating these little pod buildings. So maybe I have, the pods are actually really easy to make because they're made up of the little feet that I pulled out for the ship earlier, which is one little sprite that I mirror, this door sprite, and then these are generated using circles. So it doesn't take up a lot of sprite space to generate these little circular pods. And then I think I was going to write some logic that will connect the pods like this. So I could have a series of pods in any orientation that I want to make it look like a little base. And again, that's something else on my future version, is to be able to actually have interiors. So maybe the old base is more rectangular. Wonder if I could even, this door sprite's not perfect either. I might rework this. But maybe I could come up with something generic on the doors. Worked on the wrong layers. Maybe I can reuse the doors. And the legs even. originally my intent with the doors was to make them more of like make them look like some sort of airlock. I wanted to make some sort of seam. It's just so hard with 8 pixels. Like a seam in the door. 8 pixels and not a lot of colors. Yeah, I'll play with this more too. But I think I could do something like this where the old base isn't as like clean and white like this. It's like grungy, old, kind of rusty buildings that have been out for a while. I don't know why things would rust, but don't need realism. I like this direction though. So there'll be a separate area somewhere that is made up of these structures or something similar to them. And so that's the old base. So you have your current base, you have the old base, crashed rover. So I feel good about that. What are you getting at the original base? I could see like maybe the cockpit is something that's available at the old base. Like what's a technology that you would salvage from an old place? If whatever I call this ends up being justifiably like a seat, I think that's reasonable. Obviously in a real ship there'd be some sort of controls and something a little more intricate, but for the sake of this game I think salvaging the cockpit from an old base is probably good. Some sort of life support system from rovers or a rover. And then what was my third thing? The thruster. So then the thruster is probably from another landing site. So I feel like another landing site would be the farthest away. If you're establishing a new base somewhere, at your base, you've got maybe a rover that ran into rough terrain. You've got the original base, and then you've got a landing site. So trying to make these increasingly further away from each other. So there's some natural progression. Keeps switching me off my line tool. I think something like that. So crash rover, old base, and a landing site. Landing site. Landing site's tough though. 'Cause landing for what? Obviously it doesn't have to be tied to reality again, but I'd like to be able to justify it in the narrative of the game. Why does this exist? Why did a ship land here that you're salvaging something from? Because trying to think through it, I'm imagining, well, you would have a landing site near an old base. Which maybe that's still true. Maybe the reason why it's an old base is because of storms in that area or the natural terrain. And so theoretically, give me a different color. It's not enough of a marker. I'm just gonna try and block some stuff out here. Oh, or not. This tool is not as easy to use as I thought it would be. Probably better off doing this in A-Sprite. Okay, anyway, what I'm thinking is these would be separated by something. So the old base and the landing site are physically close together, but maybe there's some sort of rocky outcropping or something, some storm caused something to split off the landing site from the old base. And so now you've got the current base has the bot spawner system, and maybe to get to the landing site you've got to work your way down this way through something and around up to the landing site. To get to the original base, maybe it's similar, maybe slightly more of a straight shot to the original base. I want the full game to be about 10 minutes. To complete it, if you know what you're doing, about 10 minutes. So I don't want these to be too obscure. There's not going to be a lot in the way as you make your way to each location. And then the rover, ideally, it's pretty close, and the player is able to figure out the loop of supplies to the spawner. The spawner brings out more bots, and then you start to have more bots to pick up speed. You could then choose which way you're going to go. So I'd want to encourage the player to go through this area first, so there wouldn't be as many obstacles. Maybe there's a couple of rocks in the way that only a handful of bots are needed to break. Maybe there's some more supplies over here. I could have little kind of decoy offshoot areas that end up giving you some additional supply. So it's not the best way to go, but if you go down there, then you can send a bot back to base to spawn more bots. Once you've got some more bots, then maybe there's some larger obstacles that have higher health that are a little bit harder to get through, and so you'd be more encouraged to go to the original base at this point. And then, I haven't really thought about this, but maybe there's some sort of one-way obstacles of some sort. So you make your way to the landing site, and then maybe once you get to the landing site, you could break through a wall. These are all vectors, so that erase tool doesn't work like that. Yeah, maybe once you get to the landing site, there's a way to kind of break back through and get a shortcut back to the base. It would actually be great if I could do that with all of these. Provide some shortcut back for the part. So you work your way all the way there. The part doesn't have to be transferred back. So I'll have to think of some sort of one way, maybe a door, or some sort of obstacle that's like a series of rocks that's propped up by something on the other side, and so you can easily hit this thing that then triggers a collapse. I like this rough idea. I know what the places are now. I was originally worried about a base and a landing site being too similar, but I think I can work around that. A landing site, as far as artwork, I'll probably need some props around there. What else would be around a landing site? What are some parts that are strewn about? Same thing with the old base. So the old base is going to need a layout with some different buildings and some other props around. Maybe I design what an old rover would look like. So everything new is maybe like orange and white, and then the older stuff has like dingy grays and rust, and yeah, maybe just like a simple gray rover that looks kind of like a golf cart or something. I have more of a plan. I didn't do a whole lot of programming this stream, but it did give me a bit of clarity in what the final direction of this project is. So I'm going to jump off stream. I've got some family stuff to take care of, and then I'm probably going to be working on this off stream a little bit more and seeing what I can get done in the next day and a half or so until the submissions due. And then, like I said, after that, I still want to work on a full version. I probably need to fill out this a little bit more now. But I do have ideas for a full PICO-8 version, and then maybe even another version of it post PICO-8 that doesn't have all the restrictions. PICO-8 is going to be really great for figuring out the main scope of the game. Let me go back to this. Something else I didn't really talk about that I'm going to work on, that I'm hoping to work on, is the intro here was going to have instructions, and so I would like to have sort of a slideshow, at least for this version if I can get it in, from the title screen, go to instructions that show you tap the button to throw bots, and it has you actually do that action, hold the button to recall the bots, and that may be it for now. I'm not going to have time to get into different bot types. What else? I still need music. I might grab some free PICO-8 music. The title screen, I want to put a little more detail in this. There's a lot. There's always more to do. All right, I'm gonna run. Thanks everyone for checking out the stream. I'm gonna try and stick to my Wednesday schedule. So it's, for me, that's Wednesday evening Pacific. I'll be posting on Twitter and Mastodon and Discord again. Thanks everybody. See ya.